What's up, everybody? Today we're going to compare living in California versus living in Maryland. Now I know this may seem like a weird comparison, but California is the fourth largest state sending the most people to Maryland, according to the US Census Bureau. And I've lived in both. I moved to California and lived there for 9 years before moving back to Maryland. So I'm going to share my firsthand experience as well as showcase the differences in case you're thinking about moving here from California or anywhere really, because we're going to go through home values, economy, sports, culture, and more. So let's dive right in. So like I said, I moved back to Maryland, Montgomery County to be specific, 17 years ago after living in Los Angeles for 9 years. At this point, I had a 1-year-old and was pregnant with my second. Not a great time to move across country. We'll get to more of why I did it later, but spoiler alert, it wasn't my choice. But I did agree after my husband gave me his very thorough comparison chart showing me Maryland was a better place for our family. So we're gonna go through his list and I'll let you know if he was right or wrong. We'll go through the pros and cons of each. So let's start with housing. What can you get here in Maryland compared to California? And we're gonna need a budget, so let's just say $850,000. Back in the day, we bought our house here in Potomac for the same amount of money that we sold our condo in Los Angeles, which was very exciting since we were about to have 2 little ones. But since this was 17 years ago, let's see what that would mean today. In doing a quick search on our MLS, I came up with several options here locally. But let's look at this one house that sold in Potomac recently for $820,000. It was built in 1983, has 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, pretty nice hardwood floors, nice kitchen, and nice backyard. So then I went on to Realtor.com to see what I could get in Los Angeles for $850,000 in the neighborhood where I lived before, because I think that's where I'd want to live again. And it was pretty eye-opening. There were no single-family homes for $850,000. The closest I could find was a house with 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom, 640 square feet for $900,000, and that was not going to cut it. I would have to buy a condo again. I found one here for $759,000, a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, about 1,100 square feet, but it also had almost $1,200 a month in HOA fees. So, needless to say, you get a lot more for your money here in Maryland. And having 2 little ones at the time, having that big backyard was really amazing. As far as property taxes go, Maryland is a little higher. In California, it's approximately 1.25% all in. In Maryland, it's around 1%, but then you have to add in the local taxes as well, so it really comes to around 1.3%. Let's move on to one of the biggest pros and cons between Maryland and California, which has to do with the weather and daily life. One of the greatest things about living in Los Angeles is that there was no humidity and there were no mosquitoes. And if you're like me and you get bitten like crazy, this is a huge plus. Now, it could be because of the smog and pollution that there's no mosquitoes, but I have to say it was really nice to be able to go outside without being eaten alive. Moving back to Maryland, I was really happy to experience all 4 seasons. My kids will be able to play in the snow in the winter and jump in those pile of leaves in the fall like I did when I was a kid. But I forgot how humid and hot and buggy the summers were, especially between the middle of July and the end of August. A lot of mosquitoes, a lot of gnats, and extremely humid. There is also a lot of pollen here in the spring, so if you have allergies like I do, you need to be aware of that. So if you're moving here from California, just be prepared for the hot, humid, buggy summers and the allergies in the spring. But we don't have earthquakes and we don't have wildfires, so there's that. I still would choose all 4 seasons over a bug-free Los Angeles, but we're in April. Ask me again in a few months and I may have a different answer for you. Another reason that I like living here in Maryland over California is that it's just really easy to get around. Whether you want to go to New York or Boston or Florida or even Europe, it just all feels super accessible. We've got 3 airports here. We've got BWI, we've got Reagan in DC, and we've got Dulles. So you've got a lot of options if you like to travel like I do. When we were in California, everything just seemed so far away. But I am an East Coast girl, so if you tend to stay out west, this may not be a plus for you. Speaking of traveling, let's just talk about gas prices for a minute. Gas today in California costs about $5 a gallon. It's the most expensive gas prices in the country. Here in Maryland, gas costs around $3.30 depending on where you go, but it does make a big difference, especially if you drive a lot. In general, NerdWallet.com says that the cost of living is 6% higher in Los Angeles compared to here in Potomac, Maryland. But I'd like to break that down with you and talk about daily life. So let's start with groceries. Here in the Potomac-Rockville area, we have access to many grocery stores, all within about a 15-minute drive at the most. We've got Harris Teeter, Trader Joe's, Giant, Safeway. We even have Costco and Whole Foods, all within a very short drive, as well as some smaller locally owned boutique grocery stores. So the amount of choices without driving too far is really great. Much better than Los Angeles, at least where I lived when I lived there. There just weren't that many options without having to drive for a really long time. As far as cost, well, everything has gotten really expensive lately with inflation, but it's still approximately 6% cheaper here in Maryland than it is in California. Let's move on to dining out and nightlife. You've got a lot of great restaurants to choose from in LA and actually in all of California. And you have In-N-Out Burger, which I really miss. Here in Potomac, you have restaurants, but not like in Los Angeles. They tend to be in strip malls, or there are some independent standing restaurants, but there's not a lot of variety. But we are right next door to Washington, D.C., so we can go into the city anytime we want where there is a plethora of choices. The cost is higher in Los Angeles for the most part, but you can rack up a pretty high restaurant bill in some of the higher end places in D.C. One thing that we do have here is our blue crabs. So if you like crab cakes or steamed crabs, you're going to love it here in Maryland. Let's move on to diversity of experiences. California offers beaches and mountains. When I lived in LA, we used to hike Runyon Canyon all the time, and we'd head up to Big Bear to ski. Here in Maryland, we also have beaches, but it will take you about 3 hours to get to the ocean from the Rockville-Potomac area. And as for skiing, our closest mountains would probably be Liberty or Whitetail, and it will take you about an hour to get to either one. But as for hikes, I actually prefer it back here in the East because I love to see all the leaves changing colors in the fall. My favorite hike here locally is Great Falls National Park, which is right here in Potomac, and the Billy Goat Trail. You can also head to the Eastern Shore, the Chesapeake Bay, if you just want to be near a water source, and that'll take you about 45 minutes from here. So if you're a beach person, well, California definitely wins. But if you want more diversity without traveling too far, well then I say that goes to Maryland. Let's talk about Commute. Because one of the main reasons why my husband wanted to move us back here, it was because his commute to work every day in Los Angeles was at least an hour each way, and he didn't work that far away. When we moved back here to Maryland, his commute was 10-15 minutes tops. When you have 2 little ones at home, this is really important. Don't get me wrong, our traffic is pretty bad here. We're a small state with a lot of people. But depending on where you're going, your commute really shouldn't be as bad as Los Angeles. And as far as public transportation, our metro system here is pretty good. It will take you straight into DC from Rockville or Gaithersburg. It'll even take you into Northern Virginia. I know there is a metro in Los Angeles, but to be honest, I never used it when I lived there, so I can't really talk about it. Let's talk about schools for a second. Montgomery County, Maryland is known for having some of the highest ranked public schools in the country. It was also one of the main reasons my husband gave me when he went through that list of why he wanted to move back here. And like I said before, it wasn't my idea, But after he went through the list with me, I did agree, and I am very happy that I moved back here. When it comes to colleges, however, remember that was 17 years ago, so I'm dealing with colleges now. Maryland does have some great options. You got the University of Maryland, and it's got a bunch of state schools. You also have Johns Hopkins University, and there are some others, but you can't compare to all the colleges that California has to offer. They just have a lot more choices and a lot of really, really great state schools. So for K through 12, I'm gonna go with Maryland. When you get to college, I'm gonna go with California. So we have a couple more things to go through on his list, and they're kind of important ones. Let's talk about jobs and the economy. We have a lot of job opportunities here in Maryland, specifically in the Rockville area. Between Rockville being the epicenter of the biotech world, we have over 370 different bioscience companies right here locally. And Bethesda and DC right next door with government jobs, the NIH, National Institute of Health, and Walter Reed, you have a lot of options. California has the largest economy in the United States and is home to a lot of well-known tech and entertainment companies. So depending on what you do for work, we'll tell you who the winner is. So I'm a big sports fan. I just love all sports. So this one was a no-brainer for me because I'm pretty loyal to my Washington teams. But just for the sake of this comparison, you do have a lot of California teams. You've got the Lakers and the Clippers and the Rams and the Chargers and the Dodgers. You got a bunch of California teams. In Maryland, you only really have the Baltimore Ravens and the Baltimore Orioles. But like I just said, if you live in Montgomery County, which is right outside of DC, we tend to follow the DC teams. And there you've got a lot. You got the Capitals, you got the Nationals, you got the Wizards, you've got the Mystics, and you've got the Commanders, as well as some other teams. So as far as sports, since I did grow up here, this was a no-brainer for me. I love my Washington teams. And we have a big Friday night football culture here in Potomac, which is tons of fun. So it may not have been my choice to move back here 17 years ago. I mean, I was 9 months pregnant with a 1-year-old, so moving across the country just didn't seem like a good idea to me. But my husband got offered a job that he loves, and after he presented this list to me that I just shared with you, it did seem to me that Maryland would be a better choice for us to raise our family. I mean, I did grow up here and I loved living here as a kid. And 17 years later, I can't see ever moving back to California. I like having a home with a 2-car garage and a big backyard. And I love all 4 seasons, except for a little bit of the summer. I hope this helped you if you're thinking about moving to Maryland from California or really from anywhere. And if you are moving to Maryland, Montgomery County specifically, or DC or Northern Virginia, and you would like our help, just send us an email. We'll set up a Zoom. We'll get you started. And if you want to chat more about anything I spoke about today, just send me a text or an email. I'm happy to talk to you all about it. I love living here in Maryland, and I'm really happy we made that move, as traumatic as it was. And if you want to see more about the pros and cons of Maryland, definitely watch this next video. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Bye!